Next up, we have two-time author Wendy Hammond, and Wendy is the author of her newest book, Claiming Your Kingdom. Claim Your Kingdom in My Castle. Wendy's first book was Leaving the Castle, and when she first came to the author castle, I was like, please don't leave the castle. And now we're going to claim our kingdom. I love that. Tell us about this book and why you wrote it.
Well, I wrote it for expat women and trailing spouses, as I was one for 22 years. It's all about kind of finding your own voice. And I think a lot of women who move overseas with their husbands, you go through so many changes and you kind of start losing yourself because you're always second fiddle. You're always, supporting someone else and supporting your kids and going through all of these changes. And I found for myself when things came to change, when I divorced, but also I found when women have empty nests, you kind of don't know who you are because it's not as though you've stayed in one place. It's not as though you've had a career and you have a voice. You really are sent to question yourself. But the thing that I found is there's been a constant in your life that has followed you no matter where you've been, no matter what culture you've been adapting to, no matter what situation. And it's really kind of finding that. And it's a very subconscious thing. It's not really cognitive. And that's why I love using myths and fairy tales, is because it really does get underneath what our brain is telling us.
So your idea is that even if you don't know, if you don't feel like you consciously know who you are, it's there and you can
there. It's kind of like your own hero's journey. And even though you haven't been conscious of the fact that you've been on this journey and you think you've just been following someone around or following a different role, there's a lot going on. You are developing as a specific individual. And I love being invisible. I think you must know this. And it's really hard sometimes to get out from under that, because sometimes I know a lot of women that I was an expat with, they hated being invisible. I kind of enjoyed it, like flying under the radar. But actually there comes a time where you really have to step up and speak your own life, because otherwise I think you disappear even to yourself.
So powerful. Well, you have an academic background. You're a therapist.
Yes, a therapist and a coach.
And I know that you're also with me and Allison in the cerebral camp. So I thought this question from Carol was really powerful to ask you. Carol says, and hey, Carol, if you're out there, she said, how do I organize and put together years of research and quotes and information that I've gathered into one specific theme when I keep getting more and more ideas and never really get to where I want to be in the writing process?
Yeah.
I feel like that was something you had to overcome with these two.
Always. There's so many ideas and there's so many exciting things and ideas. And one of the things I love about fairy tales and myths, first of all, it gives me a story to work around. But one of the things about the process of working with different presses, each chapter you think about beforehand and you say to yourself, all right, what is the message in this chapter? What exactly do I want people to feel? What do I want them to know at the end of this? And it really helps sculpt it into one cohesive bundle. Also, the thing that I notice, I can tell you all kinds of cognitive things. However, it's what makes you tingle. It's when I write something and I think, oh, that's so true. And then the really exciting thing is when people quote me back to me and they say, oh, this shifted something for me, or if a client ever has an aha moment and they say the next week, something is totally different in my life, although it looks the same, I know that that's something really important. And that is the kind of thing that you need to put in more so than in 1940 something, Freud said this, and it means this for you. It's much more what touches you, and that's when you move things underneath. That's when life really shifts.
So here's a theory I want to test with you here on the red carpet. I think sometimes all that research and all those notes is actually a way to stay invisible behind somebody else's work. What do you think?
Yeah.
I'm an amateur psychologist.
I think definitely. It's a big risk to be able to stand out there and say, you know what, I think this. It's a lot easier to say, studies show, and I can prove that 95% of people this. But it's not so meaningful a lot of the time. And it really, I think that's what makes outliers. And I feel like on several levels, we are all outliers and we're all individuals. It's really what works for us. And the moment you start bringing in numbers or percentages, or it just doesn't click necessarily all the time. It's something that just touches you personally. It's so important to get underneath that.
All right. Well, you can get underneath it for yourself, even if you are not an expat. Wendy Hammond is the author of Claiming Your Kingdom. And so if some of these issues resonated with you, even if you're not a trailing spouse, I think you will love the way she weaves in myths and fairy tales into it. And if you do know someone who travels with their partner for business and maybe has had some trouble establishing themselves or their identity, this is a perfect book to recommend. And I encourage you to grab that link and send it right now. Thanks, Wendy.